This video is now in session, and uh, Derek Chauvin finally was found guilty of murder and manslaughter. And I say finally because it's not just a culmination of a year worth of protests and as well as suffering for George Floyd, his family, and the Black American community among I guess, most Americans. But it's also a reflection of the the slow progress that has been made in accountability for police officers that has tread on for several decades at this point. With the George Floyd case, it was such a high-profile case, but no matter the verdict, it was always going to be somewhat disappointing, um, even though there was a guilty verdict for Derek Chauvin, the police officer who ultimately killed George Floyd. At the same time, it's also pretty sad to think that if it wasn't for the Black community protesting, if it wasn't for the protesting that happened during the summer, and if it wasn't for all the high stakes commentary by politicians, then this case would have most likely gone to Derek Chauvin rather than George Floyd and the prosecution side, because because if we originally saw the Minnesota Police Department's press release of this kind of case, they framed it as a situation where George Floyd had a medical problem, and that the police that the police did no wrong, even though video showed otherwise. And it's commendable that the teenagers that were on the scene released the video, or else we would have never would have never seen this kind of case come to court. So it's a little bit disappointing as to the fact that we have to do that much, how the public has to do that much in order to get a guilty verdict, but at least there is one guilty verdict and one case of accountability for police officers when there have been at this point thousands upon thousands upon thousands of cases that should have gone to that should have gone to Black Americans, and as well as those who have been who have been killed by police, but instead it goes to police. So this is a case that will definitely open up slightly, albeit slightly, open up other cases of injustice towards Black Americans by police officers. Even though kneeling on the neck and kneeling on the neck to the point where someone is killed is not that it shouldn't be that hard to prosecute. Now in the future, when a police officer does do something like that, then it will be easier to prosecute because now there's actual precedence for accountability of police officers, a rare accountability that we haven't seen actually forever. And thus, in future cases involving the kneeling to the neck, we can cite this case and make prosecution easier. But more than prosecution, this is also a reflection of how a lot of police officers have not been good, how a lot of police officers have assaulted Black Americans, have in some cases killed them, and that's something that has to be rectified. And even though it's less than a majority of police officers, it's still a very, very high number that we have to resolve. Even though there are just a few, if that few counts to hundreds upon thousands of Black Americans assaulted or dead, then there's certainly a problem that we have with our police community. And part of that is training, but also cultural. A lot of that is also cultural, because a lot of police officers have an implicit bias against Black Americans because of all the stereotypes that have been put around them. And at the same time, the training that police officers go through is incredibly it's not good training because part of the training for some police officers is reaction time, how fast you are able to react to something. So in this case, how fast it is to react to it is to react to a person who has a gun. So you would start playing games where you would react as quick as you can, and that kind of incentivization of quick reactions leads to the kinds of situations where Black Americans are killed with a gun because of a split reaction time. That's what happened with Adam Toledo, and that's what happened with with the 15-year-old teenage girl who was shot just a couple of days ago in Columbus. Those kinds of cases where the police shouldn't have shot them, instead should have acted somewhat as a mentor and helping them and understanding them and making sure that they don't hold knives or they don't hold guns in the future, because Adam Toledo did hold a gun, but by the time the police said put down the gun, he did. The same thing for the 15-year-old teenage girl. She had a knife on, but when the police told her to put it down, she did, but was shot anyway. So yeah, it's just it's 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 denigrating to see this happening over and over again, because this isn't something as to what the police should necessarily be doing. They should be helping the community, not imploring suffering upon the community, especially a group of people who are the Black American community. I mean, with this mural that you see, you literally see just some of the names of Black Americans who have suffered under police rule. And you can see Breonna Taylor, you can see Eric Garner, and all the names. So it's really unfortunate that we have to see this happen, but it starts from the local level if we want to change this kind of culture. And the best thing for the police to become is less of less of an authoritative force. Not in the sense that they can't resolve crimes, but rather they stop shooting people constantly, and instead also have new skills like mental health assistance, because usually it's the police who respond to cases where we see people with malice intent, or people who don't have malice intent but have some mental health problems. And in those cases, having mental health treatment and having the police officers be able to do that is going to help the police officers build that trust back with the community. And another thing is, again, if they want a more direct way to connect with the community to build the bonds, then they actually have to talk to them, not just be police officers, but also be neighbors and be part of the community. Because when it becomes an us versus them situation, where it's police officers versus Black Americans, then it makes it a much more hostile community. It makes it a much more hostile relationship, and thus that kind of relationship has to change, where police officers connect instead of destroy others' lives. So those are just some things for the police. What the police can do. Other things. Like reform how our police unions work. I know unions are meant to protect people, but when police unions protect police to the point where if they shot someone and is almost definitely convicted of manslaughter and murder, they would still protect them. There were still police unions who protected Derek Chauvin, and that is not something that that's. I get that unions are meant to protect, but that's going way too far for a union. And because of those unions, a lot of these police officers who should be convicted of manslaughter and murder have not been. So we have to change how that works. But finally, it takes it takes us at the local level to resolve these issues, because a lot of times the federal government, Congress, does not have jurisdiction over a lot of what police departments do in states and in counties and in municipalities. So it has to be up to us in order to help change that from the ground up, because that's ultimately the only way for us to solidify actual change in our police departments for the better. So that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. This video is now adjourned, and I'll see you in the next one.